One of the issues with these families is that they face a number of barriers. So, in the work that I'm doing, I see the average parent. It's often a single woman. She often has two or three children. She usually has a 10-plus year addiction, including opioid use. And she has a limited education, limited job skills, or at least if she has a job, it's not a job that she can usually survive on with her children. She has domestic violence, often in her past, sometimes currently, and often multiple fathers of these children. So these are very complicated situations. And we will take someone like that and then, after an assessment, say, we're going to have you pop into outpatient treatment for the opioid use disorder that you have. And something like that is, in many cases, is like trying to cure cancer with a Band-Aid. You can't take something as complicated and long-standing as a decades-long substance use problem, particularly when opioids are included, and have that problem resolve itself in a handful of sessions over 10 or 12 weeks. Usually, somebody with this depth of problem with substances and all the associated traumas and violence and everything that a parent like that will have faced needs something much longer term, needs a lot more recovery support, especially to address barriers like how will she get to treatment, especially if she doesn't have transportation. This is not her only appointment. She usually will have appointments with child welfare. She'll have to show up at court. She might have criminal justice probation officer appointments. She may be having to go for meetings for housing, then also drug treatment meetings, medication meetings. And so all of these meetings and appointments often happen at the same time and on the same day. They're very hard to keep up with. And so we're not quite there in many instances, providing the level of support and treatment needed. It reminds me of a story where this woman I met after I gave a presentation told me that she grew up with two parents. Her father was a construction worker. He got in a terrible construction related accident and he ended up on pain medications. And that he did not have a good experience with pain medications. It ended up leading him into other drug use, including heroin, and he ended up not being able to work anymore. So the mother went on to become she was a nurse, but she took the night shift for the pay differential so that they could support the family. And so this little girl was home alone with her father. And she said, I always knew I was loved and my father was great. He was the one that did the tree forts with me during the day. And he's the one I had the best relationship with because my mother was gone all the time. However, at night, he would take her in the car. She thought she was going to card games that he would be going to. Now she knows he was taking her to the dope house. And he would make sure she had her backpack for school and some snacks and a pillow. And he would leave her in this car. He would go into the dope house, and every few hours he would come out and check on her. But she would be spending the night in the car and waiting for him to then take her to school in the morning. And so she now realizes, as an adult, she's now in her 30s, what this was like for him. But it's an example where somebody started out with a terrible accident they didn't ask for in the workplace that ended up on a pain medication prescription that then ended up not having a happy ending. So there's many pathways to this opioid use problem, and I think we could all benefit from a lot more compassion, taking a step back to understand what was their pathway and what happened along that pathway, which often involves a lot of trauma, and then providing a more comprehensive response along with the medication assisted treatment. We know that in some instances, individuals with opioid use disorders will divert some of their medications. So let's say they get 12 milligrams of Suboxone. They may take half of that, say 6, and then sell the other 6. And that's not appropriate, obviously, but these individuals are not trying to have a little empire, of funding and have a big business model going. They're usually scraping by. They're in survival mode. They're trying to put food on the table, a roof over their head, put gas in their car or to get transportation. And so instead of shaming and blaming these individuals when we find out that they're involved in something like this, that I always think it's best to take a step back and to say, well, why did you engage in this kind of behavior? It's obviously inappropriate. We cannot condone taking your dose and splitting it or diverting it. So therefore, we need to find out, well, why are you not able to put gas in your car? What kind of job skills do you need? What do we need to do to connect you to some kind of, vocational school or employment opportunities so that we can get you out of that deep hole you're in? The shaming and the blaming and kicking people out for manifesting facets of the disease that they've had, often for many years, is not going to get us anywhere. So that's a very significant issue that we see. One of the other problems is that this opioid use disorder issue affects people in different ways. So, if you have a high functioning parent, let's say, who gets in a car accident, maybe they have a good family, they have a good support system, they have a job, and they end up getting crosswise on their opioid medications and end up with an opioid use disorder. It's going to be a lot easier for them to get back on track. They have that support of the family, they have a job, they might have a good education and safe and stable home life. And so that person might be able to get through this issue much more quickly. But you can't hold that same standard to somebody who lives in substandard housing, has multiple fathers to their children, has no stable job or employment history, is a victim of domestic violence, and has all of these situations compounding each other. Somebody like that is going to need a different type of treatment, a lot more trauma support, and a much longer period of time.